Okay, this video is, has Dr. Carvalho jumped the shark? He's a doc over at Nutrition Made Simple is his YouTube channel, and he's a pretty bright guy. Let's see, first of all, what does jump the shark mean? Jump the shark comes from an episode of Happy Days with Fonzie, where he went on water skis and jumped over a shark. And some people felt the show had gone too far, that was too ridiculous, that it had lost its verisimilitude, its sense of reality and proportion. And I'm referring to this with Dr. Carvalho made a video called Are Seed Oils Inflammatory? The Evidence No One Shows. And so he's being a contrarian, and he went and he looked up a bunch of papers, and he did find a bunch of papers that suggested that omega-6 cooking oils did not significantly increase the C-reactive protein. And he made a big deal about that. Look, C-reactive protein is okay. C-reactive protein is okay, not significantly affected with omega-6s. But I think he's neglecting, I think he's cherry-picking the literature a little bit here by not mentioning the fact that there are a lot of papers showing problems with omega-6 cooking oils. Peter Quo in the 1950s, a cardiologist from Pennsylvania, had shown all these problems with saturated fat. But then two ophthalmologists, Ray Rosenman and Meyer Friedman in the 1960s, showed that you had even worse problems from eating unsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fatty acids with lipemia, high fat in the blood, and conjunctival circulation, occlusion of the small arterioles and capillaries in the eyes. Okay, here's a paper here, JAMA, and there's been other studies that have shown blood sludging with omega-6 cooking oils. This comes from Dr. Mcdougall's videos and lectures. Dr. Mcdougall says, omega-6 fats and oils are even more toxic to arteries than is saturated fat. All free oils are highly processed foods and should be considered drugs, not foods. All drugs have adverse side effects. Oil is 9 calories per gram, which means it's the highest possible amount of calories. It's liquid fat. Starch is only 1 calorie per gram, so 9 times more concentrated calories. Free oils are added to processed foods to get stuff to stick to them. When you put oil on a French fry, the salt will stick to it. When you put oil in a donut, the sugar will stick to it. These free oils are toxic and cause increased risk of cancer. That's Dr. Mcdougall. Some of his videos here, like Is There Such a Thing as Healthy Fats? And Potato Mastermind lecture. When friends ask you how come you don't add vegetable oils to your food, the August 2007 newsletter at drmcdougall.com. Okay, Dr. Mcdougall continues. All 3 types of fat, saturated fat, monounsaturated fat like olive oil, and PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, are associated with significant increases in atherosclerotic lesions, both omega-3s and omega-6s over 1 year of study. And it was only by decreasing all types of fat did the lesions stop growing. And this reference was the Blankenhorn paper from 1990 in JAMA. Okay, influence of diet on appearance of new lesions in human coronary arteries. So Dr. Mcdougall then says, olive oil is toxic for humans and all oils are toxic for humans. Another paper here, Dr. Mcdougall's lecture, all 5 fats tested, including canola oil, olive oil, sunflower oil, palm oil, and butter. So butter is sat fat, but these other ones are, PUFAs. They're polyunsaturated fatty acids, and MUFAs, monounsaturated fatty acids. Canola oil is a little bit similar to olive oil. Sunflower oil, palm oil, you're going to have more omega-6 fat in there. Okay. Let's see, what else does he say? They all cause increases in blood triglycerides and in clotting factor number 7. They're prothrombotic, increase the tendency of the blood to clot. Name of the paper was Effective Dietary Fat Quality and Quantity on Postprandial Activation of Blood Coagulation Factor 7. And then Dr. Mcdougall continues, research on animals suggests that omega-6 oils are very cancer promoting. Okay. So these are some things that would have been worth bringing up. Okay, here's a paper written by Dr. Esselstyn. And he said something along the lines of, is oil healthy for you? You can just go to Dr. Esselstyn's website, dresselstyn.com, and he has a summary of a bunch of oil studies shown that, PUFAs, here we're talking about omega-6, so polyunsaturated fatty acids cause increased atherosclerosis. So did the MUFAs, the olive oil, canola oil type stuff. Here's another study, atherosclerosis with both diets. There was one study where the polyunsaturated fats caused less of a problem than the sat fat, for example. But it's still bad. I mean, just because it's not as bad as sat fat, it's still bad. Okay, additional studies. The Blankenhorn study, we talked about it. Another study on MUFAs, on olive oil, soybean oil, palm oil, omega-6s. They all increased endothelial impairment, decreased blood flow. And then also the Mediterranean diet, which allows olive oil and canola oil. And so one of the things too, Esselstyn points out in the Lyon study, which is sort of an optimized version of the Mediterranean diet, in a 4-year follow-up, 25% of the patients had a major cardiac event, a heart attack, a stroke, or a death. That's pretty bad. 25% major event within 4 years, that's terrible. So it wasn't cardioprotective, it was increasing cardiac risk. Whereas Esselstyn's study of 198 participants at 4-year follow-up, 99.4% no recurrent events. And he said the one person who did have an event didn't follow the diet. And these are some of the papers from the Esselstyn page right here. So what I'm saying is, things that predispose to blood to clotting, atherosclerosis is a blood clot, are going to increase your risk of atherosclerosis, and they're not a good idea. Plus, it's liquid fat. It's going to make you gain weight. Things that make you gain weight over time predispose to diabetes. Things that sludge the blood increase hypertension. Hypertension predisposes to diabetes. All these fats increase your risk of diabetes. Diabetes over time causes atherosclerosis. So, industry can set up a study to make something look better or worse. And if they want to make the oil look good in some short-term study, they can make it look better than it actually is. But if you're eating liquid fat, it's going to catch up with it. You're going to be predisposed to gaining weight, having increased insulin resistance, increased hypertension, and increased atherosclerosis, which you don't want, plugging up your arteries. So I think that I would disagree with Dr. Carvalho on this lecture of his. I think he's making omega-6 oils look better than they are. I forgot to mention Chris Knobbe. He's the ophthalmologist, and he gave a lecture showing that the more omega-6 you eat, the higher the incidence of obesity, hypertension, coronary artery disease. Oh, and there's one other paper. I hadn't even got to the other paper. I got another paper in this little talk here. Oh, I meant to show Yamashima. So Yamashima is a Japanese guy, Tetsumori Yamashima. He's an editor of one of the Alzheimer's dementia journals. And he was given the task of why are so many Japanese people becoming demented? And he came to the conclusion after decades of study, it's because they're eating too much omega-6 cooking oils. And the omega-6 cooking oils were leading to lipid peroxidation reactions. Basically, it's going rancid. And it's then producing toxic aldehydes, in particular one called HNE, hydroxynonenal, HNE. And the HNE was doing all kinds of terrible damage. It was damaging something called heat shock proteins that cause activation of this intracellular protease in the brain cells and the neurons called calpain. And it was also causing lysosomal rupture where the protease enzymes in there like cathepsin would get out of the lysosome and they would just auto-digest the cell. So that's bad. So that would cause brain damage. It was damaging the neurons in the hippocampus, causing memory loss, damaging neurons in the arcuate nucleus, causing inability to control hunger. That's the hunger center of the brain in the hypothalamus, the arcuate nucleus. It was also damaging pancreatic beta cells and causing diabetes. And this omega-6 cooking oils, I believe, based on my study of the Indian diet, this is the main thing causing probably 1.5 diabetes in Indians. Because you get a lot of Indians who get, people who eat Indian diet, they get diabetes in adulthood, and they're skinny though, kind of mimicking like a type 1 diabetes. And this appears to be a type 1.5 pattern due to eating too much fried food. So I think Dr. Carvalho jumped the shark a little bit on this one. Yeah, he's a bright guy. He's a hardworking guy. He's read a lot of papers. But I think his judgment's off for saying that omega-6 are a decent part of the diet. I think they're a much worse part of the diet than is widely recognized, and people should not eat any oil at all. I agree with Dr. Mcdougall and with Dr. Esselstyn. Not one drop would be my recommendation on these cooking oils.